Yep.
Well, it's good to chat.
Hey, you too, man.
I see your internet's doing better.
Yeah, thank heavens. I'm so sorry you're not feeling good, man. Seriously, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's
If you ever
fine.
need like bounce out or like, just I'll just keep talking while you have to go if you need to go.
Oh man, no, I'm gonna pretend like it's not happening, and hopefully that works.
Okay, cool. Or just take like if you just go to the bathroom and no one's gonna mind because you have this virtual filter, so
Point, they wouldn't know.
they
No,
would know.
nobody.
Just put on mute and
I might be in the bathroom right now. Nobody
you,
knows.
it's fine. No judgment. I don't care.
Um, yeah, let's kick it off. So obviously, Jonathan, thanks for coming on podcast. Excited to have you, man. The Voices of Enablement podcast that we're doing here is really built on this arc of work that we want to bring on really experienced enablers like yourself to talk to us about how is enablement different in this economic recession or looming recession or economic headwind or whatever the heck you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because what we find is, unfortunately, a lot of enablers get lumped into kind of like a support function rather than more of a strategic role. And those support roles are usually the ones that get cut first. And so how do we elevate enablement in a way that organizations start seeing them as more strategic and less supportive? And so that's really the goal of today. I want to get you and I've obviously spoken several times before today. You have a lot of good stuff to say. So I'm excited to have you on because I want to get some tactical, practical things that someone can do instead of this is high level, what I think should happen. I want to hear some of the in the trenches stuff too from you. So excited to have you on, man. To kick it off, love to learn a little bit about, who are you? What's been going on? Give us a little bit of background on, some of the roles you've had in the past, and then we'll jump in and get going.
Well, first, Will, my man, I appreciate your patience. We've actually have met a couple of times, and at least we try to get this going. So I appreciate your patience, and always good to talk to another bold brother with facial hair. Which, by the way, if you can't see him, if you're listening to this, he has a phenomenal beard. Mine's okay. So just saying, just make sure I point that out. So a little bit about me first. So I grew up in two different fields. So one was sales, I did during the week, and the other one was life coaching. So I loved it. I went through college. I worked with at-risk youth in Chicago and in Southern Utah with different programs. So I have this counseling, coaching side of me that I've always loved and never had an ability to really do professionally. And then sales I've loved just because, one, because of the money. I'm not going to lie. I love making money. But I love relationships, and I love building relationships and connecting with people. It's just something that I've always enjoyed, is getting to know people and really using my relationship skills to hopefully to benefit somebody, which didn't always happen, but at least I tried.
That's all we can do is try.
Yeah, I'll give you a try. So I, not to age myself, but I was one of my first sales jobs that wasn't my dad. So my dad owned a tire mechanic shop. I used to sell tires and wheels to people when I was 15. So I sold for a long, long time. And then after college, I moved and I sold Yellow Pages, actually back when Yellow Pages was a thing. And I actually did. It was brutal. It was so hard because I learned that people hate Yellow Page salesmen, which I understand why. But I beat my quota. I did great. But that was what taught me. I told myself, I was like, I will never sell anything that I don't believe in, because I didn't believe in it. Like, the internet was just coming, and I was like, I loved what we were doing with the internet because I was helping my dad advertise on the internet with his company. And I was like going into other companies saying, no, Yellow Pages is the way to go. Anyway, so I said to myself, I'd never do it again. I never have. So I'm always have sold or enabling something that I truly do like or believe in or think will make a difference. So anyways, did that for 10, 15 years, sold everything from physical products to SaaS to consulting to sponsorships to all sorts of stuff across the country. I've moved around a lot. And then I had a shift where two things happened. One was I was traveling out for a SaaS selling tech job. And I was just recently married. My wife on a personal level got injured in a Ironman triathlete event.
Oh, wow.
And so it made it so she's fine, but it made it so she was dealing with some pain issues that required me to be home more. At the same time, I had an opportunity to move from sales into more of an enablement role. I was asked to. I didn't really know much about it. Even back then, it wasn't called enablement. It was more called training and content. Like, that was literally what it was called.
Wow. Crazy.
And anyway, so had to make sure I was home more. It worked out right because I was able to be home more with her and be able to do the job that I was passionate about. And then I started to do more coaching along with it. And then it became enablement as I was involved with it. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
yeah, it does.
So since then, I've I don't know if rebuilt's the right word, but redone 2 different programs with larger companies, and then I've built 2 from scratch for a couple of tech startups. And I've consulted for 10 plus companies. So yeah, I mean, that's where I've at. And most of the time, and it sounds like it's awesome. Really, it's just been friends of mine saying, "Hey, can you help me with this project, or can you help me with this thing?" And I'm happy to do it. So
Yeah.
a lot of fun stuff. I've learned a lot. I love the community. Like the enablement space and community is like one of the best, I think.
Yeah, I've learned that. I've fallen in love with this community. I feel like an adopted enabler. Or at least I'm claiming it, anyways.
Well, people like yourself, like sales professionals, sales leaders who are willing to talk to enablers, like we need more voices from the sales side. Like I am an ex-salesperson, so I have my own thoughts. But to answer your question, I think part of the challenge in enablement is there's not a consistent theme. Like there seems to be people coming from marketing, people from L&D, people from sales, even people from teaching background, which is not bad. My wife's a teacher. But we have all these different backgrounds and skills in enablement, but that also delivers different outputs to where it becomes that more of a support function versus strategic, which I find very interesting because all of those people, I follow a bunch of people on LinkedIn who are like ex-teachers, ex-L&D and enablement, and they all put out really good content, but I'm like, you're so reactive. You're not, and I don't know if reactive is the right word. It's just like, they're just not.
I think that is the right word. I think it is the right word. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. So actually to that's maybe a good place to start.
Yeah.
The like strategic elevation questions. How do you go into an organization or in the organization you're currently at, Mr. or Mrs. Enabler, how do you elevate your role or your function to the C-suite, to more of that strategic focused role instead of more of this, I say supportive, I think maybe reactive is a better way to say it, but that kind of more cost center kind of feeling of a function than that more strategic function. How do we elevate it?
It's a good question. I've thought a lot about this because it's been through my experience and then watching all the stuff happen this last 6 months with the bloodbath of layoffs.
Dang, dude.
I don't know if I have a clear answer for it because I don't know, but my gut is telling me that it would require not just yourself having a voice at C-suite or having someone be a voice for you, but the C-suite themselves understanding the value of what enablement can bring.
Mm-hmm. So organization.
Yeah, within the entire leadership team, like CFO, CEO, CRO, CMO, like everybody has to understand what good enablement is. Because otherwise, I've been in groups where only the CRO was very, very passionate about enablement, but no one else really knew. And the CRO is not always equipped to be able to communicate why that is. They can say, yeah, the team loves them. And like, we don't care if they love them. What are they actually doing for the company?
That's a good point.
So I think it's more of a leadership thing. They have to understand where it's coming from. And in the last 6 months since I've been looking for work, I'm experiencing interviewing with more stakeholders than I ever have before, which is not a bad thing. It's good.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then two is there's two sides. Like if you're an enablement leader going in, me now going through interview process, I am actually asking for more people than just the sales revenue team. I'm like, give me somebody else I want to make sure they know, understand, and I can connect with. Because if you don't have leaders involved with what I want to bring to the company, it's not going to work. And then the other side is if you're like, I just talked to someone yesterday who's just getting into enablement, only have 1 or 2 years under the belt, specialist, so if they join a team, they're going to be one of 10. So to me, it's always about going back and saying, what is the metric that this person is responsible for moving that's business oriented? Mm-hmm. Not like how many butts and seats or how many content pieces can you make in a week. That's not it. It's like, what is the business metric this role is supposed to affect? And then baseline it when you first start and then measure it all the time so that you're constantly communicating what's happening. Because that's what I think a lot of people don't do is that enablers are kind of like the silent cheerleaders. They just do stuff and they do amazing work, but no one knows about it. So it's like, you have to communicate, this is what I'm doing. Here's how I'm affecting people. So it's very obvious and very loud that we're doing something. So,
yeah, I like several of the things you said right there. First, the C-suite consistently has to be on board. And I think that starts with a clear understanding just on their side.
Yeah.
What are we trying to accomplish with an enablement function? But also maybe it takes an enablement leader coming in and saying, I heard we did a roadshow recently in Boston and somebody said something very, very interesting to me. And they said, I negotiate. This is an enablement leader. Mm-hmm. I negotiate with everyone in my organization about what my job is, what my job is and isn't, what I am going to do and what I'm not willing to do. And there's this like negotiation process between like, this is your responsibility. This is my responsibility. I'll agree to that. Yep. If you agree to this, there needs to almost be some sort of, and tell me what you think about this. This is totally me spitballing, but almost some sort of this like negotiation when an enablement leader comes in, or even maybe in the interview process, like, hey, Mr. CMO or Mrs. CMO, CFO, CRO, CEO, these are the things that I am going to take on as a responsibility as an enablement leader. Yeah. I am not a trainer. Mm-hmm. That is something that will come out of the efforts and the work that I'm doing, but I don't see me as just a trainer. right? Or I'm not going to be doing this, this, and this. This is more of the strategic things that I will be focused on. And if you want these other things taken care of, we will find somebody to do it, but that is not my job function. Maybe there's some sort of like negotiation there. I just like the word negotiation in that, and kind of that relationship, because I think it's very important. There isn't a clear definition of what enablement is. I think that is one of the biggest struggles. And so to your point, when C leaders don't have that understanding, it gets a little blurry.
Yeah, I love that personally, whether it's clarifying and negotiating, whatever you want to call it, but make sure it's openly communicated and agreed upon. Just because enablement can become, especially in my last couple roles with startups, when everybody's wearing multiple hats, it can become a catch-all of a lot of stuff, and then it becomes reactive because it's the one place that everyone can throw stuff to, and then either the person is very skill set in different things to do it, or the team is. So I totally agree with you. It's like making sure, here's what I will do, here's what I will not do, here's what my team will do, and here's what we will not do. And I even, to push a little bit further, will in the interview process, I've brought up and said, what are the metrics you guys measure? And then making sure they're very clear on what they're looking for. It's kind of like, I heard the other day from a sales conversation that like somebody posted about how when someone's going to an interview for a salesperson, they need to know the quota, their territory, how their comp plan works, all before starting. And if you can't define that, that's the red flag. For me, it's the same thing as enablement. What are the metrics you are bringing me in to actually change? How do you know that I'm successful? And if you can't define that, we got a problem. And not that it's bad. I mean, it is a bad thing, but it's more of, we need to agree on whatever that metric is. Because then when you come to me 6 months later and say, hey, can you do this project? I'll go, nope, it doesn't affect this metric. And it's not my responsibility to do that, So
yeah, it's like, what is the impact, right? Yeah. And how am I going to prioritize impact?
Yep.
I love that. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about then. I like kind of the concept. Let's say we're going through a job interview, right? Sure. It's very relevant to you. You've done this job interview.
Oh yeah.
You've identified, okay, this is an organization that gets it, right? And let's say you accept the job. Okay, you come in, it's recession or it's economic headwinds. You're not actively onboarding new reps right now.
Yeah.
What's your focus if you don't have that new onboarding as a priority? Because I know that's a lot. That's a pretty big priority for most enablement leaders, and we can get into that a little bit. Is that right? Is it wrong? Is it what it is? I think it's maybe it is what it is. But if you're not actively onboarding new reps because your company's not hiring new reps, what's your focus? What are you doing day one?
As a solo leader enabler, or just as a team member?
Solo leader.
I think about it a little bit differently. So again, I take the baseline of metrics that I want to be shifting. For example, ones like one we talk about is sales velocity or sales stages or whatever. In doing so, I will find gaps because, like, let's say, I'll give you an example of someone I just consulted with. So they are at, let's just say $10 million and they have to hit $17 million for the end of the year, right? Or within a certain time frame. So then I say, okay, what are your current metrics? Sales velocity. So average sale, number of opportunities, the deal cycle, and then what's one more? Win ratio. Average deal, number of opportunities, deal cycle, how long it takes, and the win rate. That's right. Okay. So I take a baseline of those and then I say, okay, you are currently at X at 10 million. So if we keep doing what you're doing, or if everyone keeps producing how they're producing, your result next year, and we found out it was going to be 15 million instead of 17. So they're falling short. So I said, we have to tweak these four things: the average sale, the deal cycle, the win ratio, and the number of ops. They have to move if you're going to get this goal. So let's tweak them and just see where we need to move a little bit. And then we tweaked each one by like 10%. Yeah, and they went above and beyond because we looked at the averages and said, okay, if the team as a whole changed, here's what needs to change, right? So then we found that they were way off in the win rates and all this other stuff. So then we took those percentages of changes. So saying like win rate has to go from 20 to 23, and then a number of ops has to go from 250 a month to 275 or whatever it is. So that percentage change between each one, we then applied to each rep and said, okay, if this rep is like, let's say their average sales, the company's average sales 50 grand, but theirs is at 70, great, but they're still responsible to incrementally increase their average sale by this much. What is the skill set, the process, the tool, the content, what is missing in that gap to change their average sale from 70 to 75,000? Does that make sense? And that usually comes from a sales leader, sales experts, but we say, is anybody in the company doing this much? If so, what are they doing differently than they are? And can we tell their competencies and skill sets to where we say, okay, here's where they are, here's what they're missing, and we move forward. To me, that's the only thing that really matters, is saying, how do we get to the revenue goal? What's missing? What's the gap? And then how can I, as the enablement leader, provide that training, content, whatever it is, coaching, to help them get there? Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense.
And sometimes it's saying, what is the salesperson doing that is not helping? Meaning, are they spending too much time in meetings so they can't do all the prospecting they need to get more opportunities? So it's like sometimes taking stuff off their plate so they can focus on more selling time. So anyways.
Really good.
I don't know if that's too much, but that's what I would do.
A lot to unpack there. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
My first thought is, sounds a lot of like RevOps-y kind of stuff, right? Like how involved does RevOps, if the organization has RevOps, which most typically do now, how involved does RevOps need to be, and how close is that relationship between enablement and RevOps? Or how close should it be?
Well, to be fair, I've always either reported to or worked very closely with RevOps and had great relationships with all of them. So I personally think that RevOps and enablement are the double-headed dragon, that if you have both of them doing their job well, a company can really hum, because RevOps does stuff that enablement can't or shouldn't do. Yeah. And same with enablement. Like they're just two different fields, but they're so closely aligned. Because RevOps would they take that same equation and look at totally different things in order to move the dial. More like efficiencies and what's the territory plan, and is their ability to do that, and like all this other stuff that enablement doesn't do. They focus more on skill set and systems, meaning how does someone do this, or playbooks or that kind of stuff. So it's different, but they're very, very closely aligned. And when they both work together to get to that goal, it like, to me, that's the dream. So
that's a good call. Okay, so then let me ask you another function. Product marketing. You mentioned content.
Mm-hmm.
What's that relationship like with enablement? How close is enablement with marketing? How close should they be?
I think it should be very, very close, because this is a tough question, because I think it depends on the org. I've been in places where enablement was totally in charge of pretty much all product marketing, and even had a product marketer on the enablement team. Wow. And there are other places where the enablement function doesn't do any content. They just get whatever product marketing does and delivers it. Like, they don't change it. They don't do anything, so they have no hands-on. I think a balance between the two is the best, usually. I like product marketers a lot. They have a brain that just is perfect for what enablement needs to communicate the value of what we're trying to sell, Yep. But sometimes I've seen the roles be combined. So it's a weird thing where it kind of depends on the organization's structure, what they're trying to accomplish. But personally speaking, either you need a product expert. Product marketers usually have the brain to take the technical stuff of the product and then translate it into customer speak, Mm-hmm. Enablement usually helps take that from customer speak into sales speak, so you can make sure how we communicate that to a sales or to a customer, which product marketers don't always have that. So, not saying they always don't. It's just, in my experience, they usually more focused on the customer as they should be. So
yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so then the last part of this to unpack then is the sales managers. So then you see how this gets like very difficult.
It gets dicey pretty quickly. Yep.
But so the sales manager, I've been saying recently they're the linchpin for all this to work. Yep. I really believe it. I just think about, as a salesperson, who do you listen to the most? Who do you talk to the most? Who do you worry about their opinion the most? It's your sales manager, right? For the most part. That's your, for all intents and purposes, that's the lifeblood of your job. Like, if they don't like what you're doing, then it could go downhill quickly.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of rapport that gets built between a sales rep and a sales manager, and not often between a sales rep and a sales enabler or revenue enabler.
Yeah.
So how do you then, as an enablement leader, manage the sales manager and the expectation that you have for that sales rep? Because you're talking about gap analysis, right? And helping to identify, okay, this is where, the organization as a whole, this is where we're struggling, but also individually, this is where this rep struggles with close rate, right? They're having a tough time closing deals at a higher rate because they do a bad job setting the next meeting on the call, or whatever it is, right? Whatever simple example. Well, you maybe get that from some gong calls or listening to course or whatever, but like, you're not in the trenches with the sales rep nearly as much as the sales manager is. So that person, I feel like, needs to be the most involved in these like nuanced kind of sales coaching, sales training types of activities. How do you do that? How do you get that buy-in?
Yeah, it's a good point, because even as an ex-salesperson of 15 years, I hear all the time, you haven't sold this product, you haven't sold right now, you haven't sold this. So it doesn't matter if I, as an enabler, has sales experience, that most reps want to learn from people actually doing it. So I learned a long time ago, and it's something I've applied since, that I, as enablement, whether I'm a team or just me, I'm not meant to be the expert. That's not my job. I'm meant to deliver the knowledge or content or whatever of the expert. I'm the facilitator. And so for managers, I facilitate what they need to have to make better decisions, because a lot of times, this, frontline managers are swamped with forecasting and pipeline deals and pipeline reviews and win-loss growth ratios and one-on-one coaching and all this stuff. Like, they're probably, in my opinion, one of the most overwhelmed people jobs in the entire revenue work. So I don't want to come in as an enabler and say, hey, let's do a certification. And they're like, who the crap are you? And why would I do that? I don't want to do that. I want them on my side, because, like you said, they are the key. So one is, going back to my example of the sales velocity, I wouldn't do any of that. And I wouldn't make any decisions unless I had the sales managers who were both, number one, involved, and two, back me up on it. Because once they understand the concept, I just, again, literally did this 3 days ago with a sales leader who was he's like a VP of sales, had 4 or 5 sales managers, and they were on with me. And we went through this exercise of sales velocity, and all of them like, bing, because they were all kind of like doing this one by one deal review versus looking holistically at what's the bigger picture and how do we shift it. All I did was bring the information as an enabler saying, you want to hit this goal of revenue, like all your sales managers have a quota for your team. You have to meet it by this way, which means you have to change these metrics to do this. So we have to figure out this gap so that you as a manager can be successful. So as long as I can provide that information, that's where enablement is a support function. But then we strategically work together and say, okay, manager, what are you going to do? What can I give you to help you in your one-on-ones with coaching or content or data to do your job and coach them? And then what do you want me to do as an enabler? Because there was a company 2 times ago where I was literally like the second-hand man to all 4 of our sales leaders. So if they wouldn't coach, I would shift my style of coaching and speak and sales strategy to their style because I didn't want them thinking I was trying to teach them something differently than they would. I would just mimic and echo what they said in my own way, but I never wanted to go against what they thought. Does that make sense?
That's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Because then I would lose them. If I lose their support or I lose their back, then I don't have them. And besides that, they, like you said, they know their team better than I do. So I always ask them, do you want me to do this? They go, no, do this instead. I'm like, oh, perfect. Good to go. So
I love that. So let's get a little tactical then, because I think this is perfect. I like this a lot. So to upskill, how do you, let's say 101, right? So not as a whole org, but you've identified a rep is struggling in, let's say discovery calls. We'll just use this as the theme. This rep just does a really bad job of qualifying in or really qualifying out opportunities. Does a really bad job of walking through maybe our medic qualification criteria, and just it feels very scripted. It's not a good discovery call process. You've identified that, sales managers identified that. What are some of the things that you would do? And you don't have to like be, this is the training and so on and so forth. Like at a high level, what are the things that you would do and implement and work on with that rep, and from a process standpoint to upskill that rep in that particular skill of discovery calls?
Okay, good question. In general, it's making sure the rep is moldable or flexible or being able to be coached in the first place. So a conversation we need to be have on just overall where they're at and how willing they are to be coached or not by anybody, sales manager or myself or whoever, The other thing too is you want to have some sort of, again, baseline of competency of knowing hopefully what the sales managers and sales leaders and even some of the top reps have agreed upon, saying here's the competencies, the skills, the system that an ideal A-player rep would go through. Right?
What does great look like?
What does that look like? And then we take the great and say, okay, now let's measure against the great. Where are you at? And then if they're willing to be coached, we know what great looks like. And then we have to find out what the gap is. And then you just coach to the gap and just say, okay, our goal is not to, if they're at level 1, you have to get them to level 10. The goal is not to get to 10 within 2 weeks. The goal is to get to 2 and then 3 and then 4 and identifying each of those steps so they can get to each step and then celebrate the wins along the way. Because there's nothing worse as a sales rep of being told that you're below quota, you suck at your job, and you can't have the skills. It's the worst. It kills all momentum. So instead,
preach, Jonathan.
You want to celebrate the wins, build some momentum, build confidence, and work on the stuff that actually works. So doing those things are like the basics, but I think it's the stuff that people usually miss with working with sales reps is getting that going. And then the other part is helping them see what the changes will bring to their own quota and their own life. Like to me, when I coach a sales rep, I'd always tell them my intention was, first off, I'm here to help you make money. Any suggestions I give you, any thoughts I have are all to the end of helping you make money. Like that's it. I don't care about anything else. So if you get a bigger paycheck through our conversation, we've won.
Love that. Love that.
Because usually my bonus, and I tell them my bonus depends on revenue success. So I don't win unless you win.
100%. All high tides rise all ships for sure.
Yep.
That's good. That's really good perspective. And are you thinking about self-assessment? Like, are you prioritizing that for rep? Like, do you want to get them in like an active process of self-assessing their calls or whatever it is, like trying to diagnose for themselves? Because I find that the coachable part you mentioned, if you can get a rep to start doing that, then you really have identified a very coachable rep. And is that a culture thing? Is that a person thing? Is it a combination?
Yeah, it is partly a culture thing because there's some leaders how do I say this right? There are some salespeople, actually, I'd probably say most salespeople are one of two ways. They're either super cocky and think they're awesome and don't need any help, or they're super hard on themselves and all they see is negative. And so it's knowing the balance between the two and how to work with both. Because the super cocky one, you got to sometimes break down their walls a little bit and be like, listen, I know you're awesome. You're great at this, and this, but you really suck at this. We've got to work on this. and then on the people on the other side, it's like when I have them review their calls, all I hear is like negative this, negative that, negative this. I'm like, you don't know this, but your superpower is this. And I go, wow, I've never been told that before. So it's just knowing the balance between that. And sometimes as a culture, as a manager, all they do is give feedback that's negative, and so it just either makes the cocky ones, well, it makes everyone not want to listen to feedback because all they hear is what they need to work on negative instead of celebrate and be good with the strengths. I hope that answers your question. But
it's the power of feedback, I think, is a really important piece. Prioritizing that and creating an environment where reps actively seek that out or actively give it, right? Like I'm sure as an enablement leader, you want feedback on what you're doing that is working and resonating and what isn't. And I'm sure that's important.
Yeah, there's some teams where it's a fine balance between giving the sales team too much stuff to do and not selling, but also understanding what's happening. Because like one thing you said was enablers, like I watched 100 plus gone calls in a couple of weeks. Sales leader maybe watched 5 of all their team. So I got to see the entire team's skill set on a certain part of the sales process or how they are with customers. I have a better feel of their entire team than anybody else does. And I can take different sections of that and say, hey, rep, you're struggling with discovery. Listen to A player do it here, and I'll send them a clip. And then like they love that because it's not me being the expert. It's the A player being the expert, and I'm leveraging their skill set to help the person struggling in that thing. Like, again, I'm the facilitator. I'm not the expert. Even though I feel like I'm good at sales, it doesn't matter. It's all about what the rep thinks and what they want to be, how they want to be influenced, which is usually by their manager or by the A players. They want to do what success is. And I honestly don't know that unless I start selling and become an A player, So,
I've always said what people, it's not even just reps, it's people in general, but what, I guess we'll say reps, what they want more than anything is what does great look like? Just show me what's the best email that I should send here. What's the best question I should ask on this discovery call? What's the best clarifying question I should ask on a demo? Those types of things I just need to know, because otherwise I'm just guessing, or I'm just gonna keep doing the same things I've been doing because it's kind of working, right? It's kind of working.
Yeah, it's kind of working. I get some money here and there. Yeah,
like close to quota-ish. It's fine. That's good stuff. All right, so let's end on this then. One last question for you. It's very relevant. It's because of the crazy times, and you're currently going through this.
Yeah.
If you're out in the job market right now, and you have a couple interviews lined up, okay, you're interviewing those companies just as much as they're interviewing you, right? Let's be very clear about that. What are the things that are red flags that you're looking for in an organization where you go, not here, versus what are the glaring green flags? I don't know what else to say about that. I guess it's green flags, whatever. Those things that you're like, this is where I want to be. Give me a few of each.
Yeah. Obviously, some of that depends on the personality, because my personality would not fit in certain cultures and others would, so part of it's just personality thing.
Sure.
But for enablement in general, it's more about who am I being introduced to? Like, who are they having me talk to? Who's the stakeholders in the interview process? Is it all sales leaders, or am I talking to people outside of sales?
You want to be talking to both.
I do, because if I'm responsible for the entire customer journey, I want to talk to everybody along the line of what they're expecting, because I will be eventually working with them. So it's who's involved. Are they willing to let me be involved with them, or to talk to them, or have them involved with me so they can give their voice to if they want to work with me or not? Which is hard to do in interviews, because interviews I think are kind of not the best ideal process for jobs, but that's just my opinion.
I agree.
So that's one. 2 is, how do they define enablement in general, and do they recognize it? And I'll even ask the question: do you look at it as enablement as a support function and reactive, or you look at it as more strategic and proactive?
Will they tell you? Will they tell you? I'm curious.
A lot of times they can't. I'll be honest. A lot of times people can't define it. They don't know. They've never thought about it, or
wow.
I find a lot that people, probably half the companies I talk to, have no idea what they're doing. They really don't. They don't know what the pay they should pay. They don't know the title they should do. They really don't know what enablement should be doing once they get somebody. And I've heard other companies who hired someone who was, junior, and they expected one thing, but the junior level person hasn't done it. And so they worked for a year and they let them go because they weren't doing what they needed. But the company got a better deal because that junior person didn't require a higher salary to do what they needed to do in the first place. So it's interesting to see now a lot of people are kind of wising up and seeing they want someone more strategic or revenue impact. And other times they do want someone more reactive. And if that's the case, great. That's just not me. Like, I'm not your give me tickets and I'll deliver them and see how fast.
I call that random acts of enablement.
Yeah, it's not what I do. And there is, to be fair, I don't know if enablement's the right word for it, and maybe it is, I don't know. But there is a place where requests need to go in and things need to be fulfilled based on different things, but not based on whims. Because as you know, salespeople are like, "Ooh, let's get this thing," and not let it. Like, they want all this stuff, but it's not always going to help them do their job.
No, not sales reps.
So I was like that. I'm selfishly saying that I was me. So I get it.
Yeah. Everything's a fire drill as a sales rep.
That's right. We need this right now. Okay, sure.
Yeah. I heard somebody describe it really well. It's not that sales reps have a short attention span. It's that you just have to identify what is relevant for them in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you can do that, then you're all theirs. Anything you say about that topic, you're all theirs. But if you start talking about a new sales methodology when they're worried about finding a case study for a customer, it's not happening. They don't care about your new sales methodology.
Yep.
But if they're struggling with qualifying deals and moving deals, and that is actively a thought that they're having, and they just got off of a call with their sales manager reamed them about not qualifying deals in their pipeline, your sales methodology looks really, really good right now. Right?
It's true.
Very
true.
That's just how it is. I think most people are like that. Yeah. But salespeople just have so many different responsibilities or different things to grab their attention. And if you catch them at the wrong time, it's bad.
Yeah, I think managers and salespeople in general, first off, because I was one, but I love sales teams. Like I love them. Some of my closest friends are there. They're a different breed. So you have to understand where they're coming from, because they're literally hair on fire because they're trying to take care of a customer. That's usually why. Like their intention is good, but it always comes across as like, we got to right now. And then enablement is the one, because they're in the revenue org, will be the one who has to jump, and therefore becomes the support, instead of being more strategic and saying, okay, before we do this system, training, content, whatever, tell me what you're trying to change with the sales process because of this request. And I got to be the annoying voice of that, but people understood that if they came to me with a request, they had to tell me what was the end result they're going for, not just some random thing they wanted to be created, including the CRO. I had to push back on him saying, what do you want to shift because of this training? If you can't tell me, we're not doing it.
Smart. So, that's good. There's the negotiation part.
I was just like, just honest, like, I'm here to bring value. And if you can't tell me what value I'm going to be bringing by measuring the metrics, why would I do this?
Smart. Love that. Well, Jonathan, this was awesome. We're gonna do another series at some point. And I want it to be strictly about sales reps and sales enablement. I want to hear what sales enablement thinks about sales reps, and I want to actually ask sales reps what they think about enablement. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna do that at some point. So
you have to do that, because
I'm gonna have you on for that. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome.
I love it. I'm like that person. I'd love to get feedback, because I love that feedback. But I think you should do it. Love it.
It's gonna be great. So I'm gonna do it. In the meantime, how can people find you? You post great stuff on LinkedIn. How can people find you? What's your tag or your
so if you go to LinkedIn and you look up JMK MBA, that's my LinkedIn thing. So JMK MBA, but or follow you or follow me or whatever. I don't care. Just connect with me. I'm usually, if you don't spam me, I will respond to your emails.
Don't sell me something.
Just, your salesperson listening to me, don't pitch me. I see right through it. But anyways, I'm just kidding. But I do love connecting with people. So if there's anyone who has an issue, problem, whatever, reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks again, Jonathan. We'll connect soon. And I think everyone's gonna love the content that you had on this podcast, but honestly, more importantly, the content you just daily put out on your own channel. It's awesome stuff.
I appreciate that.
We'll talk soon.
Love it.
Later, man.
Bye.